Facebook and death. This video focuses on how the experience of death has evolved from traditional offline interactions to new forms of communication enabled by the social networking site Facebook. Traditional psychology theories have long debated how mourning develops, as well as the types of actions and influences that allow people to deal with loss. Kubler-Ross proposed a stage theory model of grief, which argues that people chronologically evolve through 5 stages during mourning: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, after which they come to terms with the individual's death and move on. A contradicting model argues that to address grief, individuals create long-lasting inner representations of the deceased, which allow them to maintain a post-mortem continuous bond. Both theories were combined in Strobe and Schutz's dual process model. This proposed that to engage with loss and employ restorative behavior, the bereaved need to balance the process of grief, which is a central part of the stage model, while simultaneously maintaining a continuous bond with the deceased. In offline settings, this generally happens through interactive communication by sharing memories and grief-related information with other bereaved. Facebook enables novel forms of interactions by expanding the socio-spatial and temporal dimensions of grief communications. By discussing novel types of interactions allowed by Facebook, we will evaluate the extent to which traditional theories of grief can account for such digital innovations.
In an offline context, a person's death is only experienced by family, close friends, and their immediate surroundings. But with Facebook, such social and spatial constraints do not exist. Thus, it gives everyone in the deceased friends list access to the experience of death. Walter illustrates how experiencing death has communally and individually evolved through traditional, modern, and postmodern frames. He proposed that, traditionally, death was experienced within small communities, such as churches. Later, from a modern perspective, death was experienced in intimate spaces, like the home and hospital, where the private and the public were separate. Today, with the increased popularity of digital technologies, death can be observed through a postmodern lens, which combines both the public and the private spheres. However, sharing grief-related content on Facebook may isolate the bereaved from face-to-face interaction and prevent other forms of support. Brubaker et al. Further describe the hardship of expressing grief on Facebook. Given that Facebook connects even the most casual relationships, the experience of a person's death reaches even the most random people. Such ambiguous ties on Facebook create uncomfortable situations where people who might have otherwise not been aware of a person's death must now make decisions about how to participate or not. For example, when I saw a rest in peace post on a Facebook wall of someone I had met once, I did not know the appropriate way of responding. Should I have liked the post, commented on it, or sent the family a message? Instead of unfriending them, which seemed cruel, Facebook allowed me, via its hide and unfollow feature, to avoid seeing their content on my newsfeed. This can be considered as a form of ignoring death that is unique to Facebook. Nevertheless, even hiding the content made me feel guilty because I felt like I was minimizing the tragedy or disrespecting the deceased.
Another novel form of interaction that is enabled by Facebook is the reconstruction of a post-mortem identity for the deceased. In offline settings, a person's identity is only created throughout their life, thus remains fixed and static when they die. On the other hand, in online settings, this is not the case. The deceased's identity continues to be built by allowing Facebook friends to share different narratives. As the loss-oriented aspect of the dual process model proposes, maintaining attachment to the deceased is essential for the grieving process, and preserving the deceased's identity is crucial for this attachment. Long before Facebook was created, Unruh proposed 4 strategies for identity preservation, one of which is the sanctification of symbols associated with the deceased. Today, the Facebook profile of the deceased has become one such symbol. Thus, Unruh's theory accounts for online settings as well. However, the personal touches added by the deceased while they were alive provide their Facebook profile with a distinct advantage over other personal objects, which the traditional theories do not account for. Looking at a person's Facebook profile, we can see self-selected aspects of their personality being clearly depicted in photos as well as in their About Me section. This type of information helps the bereaved feel more connected to the deceased and thus facilitates the grieving process. With Facebook, more people who knew the deceased from different social contexts, such as old school, work, sports clubs, have the chance to share information about the deceased. On one hand, more activity on the deceased's Facebook profile gives their close one a sense of support and adding meaningfulness to the deceased's life. On the other hand, information provided by the wider circle of the deceased can be confusing for their close ones, as they may provide with information about the deceased that their close ones were unaware of or contradict what they believed about their beloved one. These conflicts may hinder the grieving process by making it more painful for the bereaved. However, it is usually beneficial for those who are not that close to the deceased. For example, after an acquaintance passed away a few years ago, I went on her profile and found other people's narratives very useful and insightful in helping me build a more complete identity for her.
Facebook has offered a new way for people to speak to the dead, and research has shown that the content of their dialogue may differ between offline and online settings. For example, in an offline setting, when people talk directly to the dead, it is likely to be in a private environment such as a person's grave, whilst talking about them is more public and may take place with other people in obituaries or speeches at funerals. Brubaker, Hayes and Dorish find that in an online setting, people are more likely to speak directly to the dead than about them, using terms such as, "I'll miss you forever," and "I can't believe you're gone." This is defined as a form of public-private speech that is a genre within social networking sites in general. Another difference between the way people speak to the dead offline and online is that grieving on Facebook is regarded as more casual than more traditional grieving processes. Brubaker, Hayes and Dorish show that there is a mixed opinion amongst the bereaved as to whether this is a positive or negative aspect. For example, some believe that Facebook should be used as a celebration of an individual's life and find casual messages uplifting. However, others find the medium too casual for the grieving process and even characterize post-mortem wall posts as inauthentic requests for attention. As a result of this, some individuals express a preference to use the memorializing Facebook feature that turns an individual's page into a post-mortem account for people to write messages and share information on. However, this novel form of interaction cannot be accounted for by stage theory because the stages of grief are too rigid and directive to take into account the additional factors that a public online audience brings. As a result, speaking to the dead on Facebook is a digital extension of more traditional methods, which some of these theories can account for. However, it should be noted that there is an added component of the public-private speech that makes online processes different.
In addition to the socio-spatial expansion aspect, grief also expands temporarily with Facebook. In the offline context, people would have attended funerals, connected with friends and family of the deceased, then move on. For those left behind, memorializing their loved one was a solitary activity. Such feelings of grief can last for years. This is accounted for by the persistence of grief. In other words, the inherent sorrow is never gone. There is never a true resolution or cure, since the emotions come and go, sometimes unwilled and unexpected. The bereaved may sometimes feel the need to forget about the deceased and at other times have the need to share. With memorial pages on Facebook, the bereaved can share such feelings and memories about the deceased by posting messages and media on Facebook. This is also accounted for by the dual process model, in that the bereaved deals with loss by yearning about the deceased through posting feelings or memories. To a certain extent, Facebook contradicts the stage model of grief, which states that after the death of a close person, one must return to a positive state of mind and well-being as soon as possible by normalizing the persistence of grief and by eliminating the agency over when and how one grieves. On the other hand, Facebook is well known to connect even the most casual relationships, but every time a bereaved posts messages or information about the deceased on Facebook, those acquaintances will be faced with unexpected and uncomfortable encounters with death and grief. Research has shown that death-related messages or media can significantly disrupt a user's day. In addition, posts about death peaks a specific moment over the years associated with commemoration events such as death anniversaries or celebrations. Such posts would affect all the people in the deceased friend list, which would not happen in an offline context. As a result, Facebook enables the interweaving of death into everyday experiences rather than just in memorials and funerals, which is beneficial to close relatives but detrimental to the less significant others. Overall, Facebook seems to offer a new space to share experiences of death. The appearance of social networking sites has led to adopting new means of grieving, such as by sharing photos, memories, and messages within the technological systems. These new means of communication lead to the transcendence of socio-spatial and temporal barriers previously restricting the experience of death. Studying such novel interactions can lead us to a renewed understanding of traditional psychology theories, which will allow us to explain human behavior within cyberspace, as well as how the traditional psychology methods must expand to account for the new ways of sharing information.